Hi, this is Jason with Yeldell Scientific, and I wanted to do a quick overview of our inventory management solution using Microsoft Excel. You can launch the application by double-clicking on the icon, Inventory Management. You'll then be presented with a touchscreen compatible or mouse compatible user interface through which you can manage your inventory control mechanisms. So to get started, once the system is loaded, you would need to set up users who are able to access the system. These can be various technicians that work at your facility that need to have access to the system to scan barcodes in and out of stock. So we can simply go into user profiles, and this is where I would grab my USB or Bluetooth enabled barcode scanner gun and scan a technician's badge or unique barcode that represents them. In this example, since you can't see me doing that, I'm just going to type in a unique set of numbers. Let's say that a technician has an ID of 12345. I can enter that or scan it into that particular text entry field and then click on the green checkbox. It lets me know that that technician ID doesn't exist. So now I can actually create a profile for that technician. I'll name that technician as myself. I can see that the ID is now saved, and you can enter any optional notes. And this particular field is configurable in case you wanted to set up different roles and permissions. Maybe for certain users, you don't want to have them have the ability to scan out stock. You only want them to scan in stock, or vice versa. You can set those types of permissions up via this text entry field, but I'll just say general user. And that technician is now added to the system, and we can proceed. Once we're back at the main menu, the next thing that we can do is scan an item into the inventory system. So I can grab a particular item that's already barcoded, and I can actually then scan it and add that item so that the system recognizes it, and then I can set the stock totals and the details and things of that nature. So I'm going to click on Scan Items In. Now, the very first thing that happens after you click that icon is that you're prompted to log in as a specific technician. All of the actions and transactions that occur within the system are audit trailed and always recorded, and they're always tied back to the technician ID that's logged in at the time. So at this point in time, I would take my ID badge and scan it, or scan a particular set of badge codes that exist laminated on a wall, however you want to work out that process. But in this particular example, I have my ID and I'm just going to scan it. My ID number is 12345. So that goes in. It goes in, it recognizes that I am that particular technician. I can then confirm this prompt and proceed. And now I can actually pick up an item and scan it into the inventory system. This is just for the initial setup of adding an item to the system, adding an item to the warehouse. So I have a particular item here in my hand. I'm going to use my barcode scanner gun. I think it's let's assume that it's a bottle of rat poison or something like that. And let's say that the unique name, let's call it Tomcat Rat Poison. I'm just making something up off the top of my head. You can assign a cost to it if you needed to track those kinds of metrics. Let's say that this item has a particular cost of $29.99. You can assign a lot number. Let's assume that it has a lot number of L12345. And you can also assign an image that represents that particular item so that within the system, whenever that item is called up or being referenced on screen, it will show you a little icon of what you're talking about. So let's assume that I pasted in that product image again, and that's optional. And I can set the unit of measure for this particular item. Let's say that it comes in the bucket. So I'll select particular bucket from the drop-down list. And then I can save the item to the system. So now instantly we can see that we've now added the Tomcat Rat Poison underneath the unique barcode ID ending in 095 to the system. The unit of measure is buckets, and it has a lot number assigned of 12345. And we can actually see the image that represents that particular item. At this point in time, we can scan the next item that we want to add to the warehouse, and I'll just grab another item that I have here. And again, I can repeat that process to add this item to the system. This is just the one-time initial setup. And let's assume that it's some boric acid. So I'll type in boric acid. And I can assign a cost to it of $7.99 for internal purposes of just tracking. I can assign a lot number to this item of, let's say, 776655. I can update the product URL appropriately. And let's say that this product comes in containers. And you can save that item to the system. And now we can see that there's two items that exist within the warehousing module of our particular software. So we have the item ending in 095, which is the Tomcat rat poison. And we have the item ending with a unique barcode of 405 that represents boric acid. Now, at any given time, we can save this information to the system. So I'll select Save Data. And now the inventory and all the information regarding these particular barcodes have now been added to the system. And we're brought back to the main menu. Now, at any given time, we can view all of our inventory totals and adjust them by going to the View Inventory module. So I'll go to View Inventory. Again, every action is audit trailed and has preventive locks to make sure that nothing is accessed inappropriately. So I will log in as myself under Technician ID 12345. Again, that can be scanned in via a barcode. It recognizes who I am, and now I can proceed. Now, right now, we're looking at the warehouse. We see that we have our two unique items. They exist within the system, and these pictures can be scaled appropriately as needed, but this is just an example as a prototype. And you can see the items here. Now, they have a current stock total of 1 because all we did was basically add the first instance of these items to the system. But at any given time, as an administrator, you can come to this warehouse module and update the stock totals. Let's say that my boric acid, I want to increase that. So let's say that we're starting off with 500 units of these in the system. I can do that. And now we can see that actually we already had 1, so I added 500. So now we have 501 of these in stock physically. This is our physical stock, 501 of these items, these containers of boric acid. Now, because every action is tightly controlled, we have a audit trail product history that's always recorded and housed securely within the system. So we can see that the item was added originally by this Technician ID 12345, who happens to be myself, and it has a date stamp and a time stamp. Then 1 unit was added. That was the initial setup. And then I added an additional 500 units just a few seconds ago. And we can see that here. And we can do that again for the next item, the rat poison. Let's say that we want to add some more to this. Let's add a proper total of 499 this time to yield us a total of 500. And we can see that the product details have been updated. Now, at any given time throughout any screen of the system, you can always view this information in a easily viewable Excel worksheet by simply clicking on View as Worksheet. So if I click View as Worksheet, I'm immediately automatically presented with a dynamically generated spreadsheet containing the barcode, the product, the current inventory, the units of measure, whether it's buckets, containers, liters, jars, vials, etc., and the lot number. Now, the benefit here is that the spreadsheet view is not physically housed within the system. It's dynamically generated on demand. All of your data exists elsewhere, but you can always generate a refreshed spreadsheet view of that data via one click. And I'll show you the back end of where that data is stored as well. But let's just go back to the main menu for now. And let's assume that I'm a technician and I have to fulfill an order. There's something going on where we need to retrieve some of these items from our warehouse to fulfill a customer request or some sort of order. That's a typical use case. So I would go to Scan Items Out, and I would log in as myself or whatever my technician ID is. And then let's say that I need to retrieve some items from the warehouse to fulfill an order. So I'll select Order Fulfillment. This action is tied to a transaction ID. So it's always going to be viewable in the system to know that myself, Jason Yeldell, I withdrew some items from the warehouse underneath transaction ID 1007 on this particular date. All the details are always available. So I'll select the green checkbox. And now I'm in the actual scan out module, so I can grab one of my items. Let's say that it's the poison or something to that effect. I can scan it with my USB or Bluetooth enabled barcode scanner. It immediately finds the item. It knows what lot number that it resides underneath. And that's just one item that I've scanned. And you can see that it has a total value of $29.99. And I can, let's say I needed to remove 3 of these from the warehouse. I would just scan 2 more. There's another one. And I'll scan another one again. That's my final one. These are the 3 items that I'm removing from the warehouse. Now at this given time, I can just click Save Data, or I can click Export and view it as a worksheet view. Both of them will save that information to the system. Let's just click on Export to Worksheet as an example, and we can see what's going on. So immediately I'm given a dynamically created, refreshed spreadsheet view of what exactly occurred just a few seconds ago. We can see that I removed these 3 items from the warehouse. These are their associated unit costs, the units of measure, their lot numbers. We can see the total cost of whatever those items were. We see the date and we see who does it. Now this particular spreadsheet view, this can be configurable by you on exactly how you want this formatted. This can be engineered in a way so that it can tie into your existing spreadsheets that you may have with formulas and things of that nature. The options are kind of limitless there. We will just need feedback from you on exactly how you want that information tied in. Now we can return back to the main menu at any time by pressing Control Shift and A, and that brings us back to the main menu. So as an example, because we recently removed some items from the warehouse, let's go to view the inventory to make sure that everything was updated. So we'll just simply click on View Inventory, log in as ourselves, and now we can see the inventory for the rat poison has now automatically decreased by 3 units because I had removed 3 units from the warehouse. And we can see that the product history has been updated. We started with 500 and I removed 3. So now we have 497. You can see the 3 entries right here that were removed recently from the system. And again, at any given time, you can click on View as Worksheet and see a dynamically created view of those inventory totals. Let's go back to the warehouse. Go back to the main menu. Control Shift and A. Now, one of the other things that's built into this, and again, this is a completely customizable system that can be further tweaked and enhanced according to your exact requirements. So we would obtain exactly what you need this application to do, and we would build it onto this existing type of framework. But one of the things that we can do is a search engine. So by clicking on Search Engine, you can do various things. You can search for any information in the system based on a barcode, based on a transaction code, or based on a particular technician ID. So as an example, we know my technician ID by heart, so we can easily just scan that in or type it in, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we can immediately see any entries in the system that have anything to do with that technician ID. And here we have it. Very, very user-friendly and very, very far-reaching. It's very important to have that kind of traceability. Now, another thing that we can do is search by the product barcode ID. So I can pick up my object, or if I'm in the warehouse, I can just walk up to it and scan it with my Bluetooth scanner gun, and I'll do that right here. And now we can see that it found that item. This is the name, this is the lot number, this is our current stock, and we can see the product history. So one of the other things that I wanted to showcase was the back-end granular structure of the system that basically houses all of the data outside of the spreadsheet view, but yet at the same time, the spreadsheet view can access the same data. And this gives you the seamless ability to have a very fast and quick functioning system, but also gives you the leverage, if need be, from an administrative perspective, to be able to manipulate the back end as well as the front end. So we can see here in the back end, we have a list of folders, and this folder, these 2 folders, for example, represent the barcode IDs that exist within the system. So if you look inside of one, you can see all the details. This is for the rat poison, I think it was, and we can double click on the name and see that it's for the rat poison. We can see the history of everything that has ever occurred against that particular barcode ID. It's all granular and dynamic on your system. We can see the URL for the image that represents that. So by having all of this information in the back end, it can get sucked in and pulled into the spreadsheet at will. So you're not left with a huge and cumbersome Microsoft Excel spreadsheet. You're left with a system that uses Excel that can pull in this information very quickly in a matter of milliseconds whenever it needs to. Similarly, If there's any options or configurations that the system needs to have, they will exist within the options folder. If there's any transactions, all the transaction information that exists is in the transaction folder. The data, for the technicians, each technician has a unique ID. That information exists outside of the system, but at the same time, it's used by the system. And we can see here that this is the technician ID for myself. So by having this ability to have the information housed outside, it really pays its dividends later on when the system becomes much larger and you have thousands of products within the system. If you want to quickly look at some things in the back end, you can freely do that, provided that the system is not locked down. In this example, I have everything freely open and publicly available. But in your particular use case, you may want to hide some of these folders. You may want to have certain things restricted so that an average user can't navigate this folder structure. All of that is possible with this system.